Welcome to another episode of Unbuffered. I'm Chris Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and we've got Doug Dawson here, returning guest, champion from CCG Consulting and the proud author of Pots and Pans by CCG.com. Welcome back, Doug.
Thank you, Chris. And I still weekly have to explain to people what pots are, so...
Yes. I had some fun. We did the Tribal Broadband Bootcamp 23 this week with Hoopa Valley. And there on the fly, we decided to talk a little bit more about, usually we talk about the physical infrastructure and not so much about how data is sent and received. But people were really curious about just binary and how different systems work. And I decided to go a little bit further and talk about how data is sort of sent, and you keep increasing the number of packets you're sending until you see them starting to drop. And we did it like it was like a baseball game of sorts with a couple people. And then at some point, someone just drop the baseballs in the middle if their buffer is too full. So it gets back to the show. I was thinking about that a little bit.
That's a good example. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of, I came up with it in the moment, and I think we'll probably try to get it a little tighter and then use it in the future for people to better appreciate this. My goal is that people walk away feeling like empowered and not like this is magic that you have to have a PhD to understand.
They do. I've talked to several tribes who've been to your boot camps. They come back very loving it, and they do feel they get energized to go do something. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and I mean, you've worked with Hoopa Valley as well. We were just there seeing their amazing data center that they've built. It was great. There was a bunch of stuff that I learned that I was not familiar with, and it was just great to see what they've done there. So, okay, today we're going to be talking about one of our old favorite topics. We've got 4 topics, and several of them are ones we've touched on before. But one is really exciting because we got good news when it comes to railroads and fiber. And let's just hope that good news keeps coming as other courts review this, perhaps. That'll be our first topic. We're going to talk a little bit about public Wi-Fi. Doug wrote about the need for more public free Wi-Fi and how that's kind of disappearing. And it's a time where we need more of it. We'll talk a little bit about the future of the Federal Communications Commission in light of the Slaughter decision, which gives the president more authority, clear authority to fire commissioners. Perhaps there's some that have questions about how clear that is. Sorry. The future of the FCC with Slaughter decision is the final topic. The third topic we're going to slip in there is a little bit about Starlink becoming a mobile network operator and what that might take. And we're not going to go and beat it to death, but I thought since I had Doug on, I want to talk a little bit about it. So Doug, let's start with the railroads. And we've talked before about state efforts to try to introduce shot clocks. That's been turned over by courts then. And generally, we've talked about how building a fiber optic network, people always complain about permitting and challenges like that. Fundamentally, one of the biggest issues is crossing railroad right away. It is kind of a permitting issue. It's not anything local governments can do a lot about. But the 7th Circuit, which includes Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin, has made a ruling that made our day. So what's going on there?
Well, and first, let me go back just a little bit of time, because you're right. The last big effort to do this came out of Virginia, and they tried to do a shot clock, and the court said they can't do that because they said they don't really have authority over setting rules for those rights away.
Right, and a shot clock being that if you wanted to apply for a permit, the railroad had to respond within a certain window. They couldn't just put you off for 2 years.
Yes. So we thought that was great, but that got shot down and the ruling was local jurisdictions and states don't have authority over that. This ruling's way better than that. So this ruling was CSX versus Zayo. And so Zayo, now I read the whole order, and Zayo, this one actually came about because Zayo just went ahead and built like 10 places without a permit.
Yeah, you get the sense that they had some internal conversations that involved a lot of expletives, and they were like, you know what, we're going to do this.
Yeah, so it sounds like they had already just gone and built. And so what the court ended up ruling was the railroad has it is there by rule of an easement. An easement just says you can use this land for a certain purpose. And what the court said, easements are just for the surface. They said that easement doesn't cover above the tracks for aerial fiber, as long as it's high enough to be safe, and it definitely doesn't cover underground fiber. So they said that you don't need any permits at all to build railroads as long as you are safe doing it safely. Now, CSX did have one good point, which who knows if they're true or not, but they said there was a couple cases where Zayo had actually damaged some of their underground fiber because they dug into it. And that is a problem because you can't locate fiber that's under a railroad track. Locating is where you have a X-ray that looks down in the ground to see what's there. You can't look under the big giant metal railroad tracks, right? So
right, you can't get that signal. So
no.
and you can't just call 811 if you're
No, they can't locate it either. Yeah,
yeah.
And the railroads have never registered any of their fiber. It's not on anybody's books.
I mean, if they had copper and you made some assumptions, I would think you could back off a little bit. Even if they had a tracer wire in there, and you could basically assume if you could find it on both sides back a little ways, it was going in a straight line, you might have some guess of where it is.
I mean, if I was going to do one under road, I would just go a foot or two deeper than normal. I mean, it's only for 40 feet. You just go deep and get it over and done with. But that's the good news is if this holds up, this will certainly be appealed. But if it holds up, then we don't have to go to any other. We don't have to go and ask the railroad's permission anymore. I would still do it because I would want to find out if they had buried fiber, but I no longer need their permission. So,
and it's a big deal because we've talked before about how the railroads can be really hard to deal with. They charge an unreasonable amount of money. And there's a bunch of rail that's been bought up by companies that exist not to ever use the rail, but just to railroad people with high rates.
Yeah, they've literally bought those easements. They're railroads, there hasn't been a train on them for 40 years, right? But that's the ones who want to charge a lot.
It's infuriating.
I ran into one of those in Oregon who wanted $20,000 to go across their tracks. It's like, guys, this is a dead railroad. We got bailed out there because the city bought out their easement and made a hiking trail out of it, and then we were fine.
Nice.
So,
yeah, I mean, this is where, and I'll just say, like, from a policy point of view, if you see agreements where like Congress does something for 99 years, that is way better than forever. When they gave the railroads these easements in perpetuity, which is my understanding of what happened, boy, was that a mistake. It's just, they really wanted the railroads to get built, and it was just too much of a giveaway, though. It was really a bad idea.
Now, there are places, the very original cross-country lines, some places they actually gave them the land. So where they gave them the land, this ruling won't have any effect. And that would just be some of those very, very old original lines of the first big direct routes. So,
and in some cases, towns were built up on those.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, railroads were the biggest boom to industrialization of the U.S. I mean, factory towns and slaughterhouses and just towns grew up everywhere along railroads. Yeah. Because otherwise that was the first interstate highway. They were awesome. So, yeah.
So that was the technology of the past.
Yes.
The future, we're told, is in space. And I don't know. I put a link in our group chat at work here, where there was this some freaking TikToker had this thing about like fiber optic cables were obsolete now that we have the ability to do lasers in space. And I was just shaking my head, just, okay. All right, great. I want to talk about Starlink a little bit and whether or not Starlink is going to become a mobile network operator. So just a quick clarification. I've talked before about how I get my mobile internet access through an MVNO, a mobile virtual network operator, which means that I go with a company. In this case, I actually use Mint and Ting, two different companies. One predominantly uses the T-Mobile mobile network operator network. The other predominantly uses Verizon, their network operator. And Starlink could very well do that. They could offer a service that they supplement by being a virtual network operator on AT&T, T-Mobile, or Verizon if they wanted to go that route. But they want to actually build, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of access points to be able to offer their own competing service in theory. Like this is one of the ideas that they're kind of, I think, running around to see how Wall Street reacts to it. That's my impression, Doug. Is that right?
That's what he's proposed. But, this is one of Elon's. He doesn't have small ideas. This is a tremendous idea. So, I mean, the investment involved in doing that, because what's going to happen is the three big ones roam on each other. So they used to use different technologies. Now they don't. So if you go to a part of the country, and I have AT&T service, but the only one there is T-Mobile, I can still make a call because they have a roaming agreement. The three of them said they're not going to make any MVNO deals with Starlink. They don't want to let another competitor into the market. So he can't even launch that until he's everywhere. No one's going to buy that. What if they just put those in Minnesota? It's the only place you could use your phone.
Mm-hmm.
So he can't do it until he really does it. I just think I personally just think it's another one of his big. Remember, he's always trying to get his stock price up, in this brand new company. So I just think he's like every quarter. I think he's going to have a brand new idea. It's really not practical, not to do it from space. On top of that, he can't deliver enough bandwidth for the urban places. He needs fiber for those. I mean, some of those have 10 and 20 and 30 gigabit fiber feeds, those big cell towers. He can't get that much bandwidth without satellites. He could with his new satellites, he could do rural cell towers. But again, no one's going to buy his cell service if it's only good for their town.
Right. This is my thought, was that there's this idea like, oh, well, like he would be very easy for him to put up towers because he just needs to have them be able to have a view of the sky. Okay, but like there's a lot of work that goes into that still.
Towers are expensive. Yeah.
And like you said, it would be like, there's not a huge market for people that want to have great mobile access only in rural areas and not in any cities. Right. Navigating the city processes. I mean, maybe he'll just buy Crown Castle or something. I don't know, or one of those companies to be able to do it. But there's just a tremendous amount of work involved in that. And it's like you said, I think it's more that he's just trying to get people that are bought into the Elon brand to think that his company is worth more, because in their documents, they claim in the future that they are going to be basically the telecom monopoly. You can't look at the documents of the revenue that they propose to receive without assuming that they are 75 to 80% of all telecommunications revenue in the world, which is pretty ambitious.
No, the last quarter announcement, he said that. He says in another 10 years, he's going to be the biggest. He's going to be carrying more than half of all the traffic in the world. It's like, really? And that includes like India and China where you're not at? And it's like, really?
I mean, yeah. I will say that like we were deeply frustrated when T-Mobile was allowed to buy Sprint, because moving from 4 competitors in the mobile network operator market to 3, significantly less in competition. I think it has worsened services in a lot of ways. I think that it has driven prices up, and having 4 competitors would be great. And so I'm not going to sit here and say, that it's a bad idea. I just don't think he's likely to do it. It would be nice to have the four real competitors again in the market.
I just know what all the real hurdles are, and it's such a long list of hurdles to overcome. It's not impossible. The one thing that he could possibly do, remember that, we had a 4th competitor here for a while, so so they just went out of business. So
Dish.
So Dish went out of business recently, so they had a lot of tower sites already reserved. That's not nearly enough to do what he's talking about doing. I think they had 10,000 sites or something, and he's talking hundreds of thousands of sites. So now it would make more sense for him to do that in the third world. I think he could be a huge splash in a place like Nigeria. 100 million people and cellular sucks there. He could actually possibly clean up the market there.
Well, I do think it's worth noting.
This seems like here in Europe are really competitive. The rest of the world is not competitive. So,
I mean, right now, just back of the envelope with numbers that, I mean, this is not my expertise, but he's got 10,000 satellites up. He's proposed 25,000 in the near future. He's trying to get these V3 satellites up that will offer much greater capacity. However, in Los Angeles County, I think I was trying to figure this out, and like these numbers are based a bit on AI, but like I want to say there's like on the order of like 1,000 to 3,000 macro cell sites that he would have to connect, right? And each one of those, like you said, I'm going to guess is between 10 and 40 gigabits per second. There are at any given point probably 10 to 15 of his satellites that are in the view of that. His satellites are capable of, I think, up to 100 gigabits per second in some of the newer versions in theory. But he's still, with like the kind of amount he's talking about putting up there, he would not be able to serve Los Angeles
No.
cell needs with satellite service alone. He would have to have significant local fiber optics connecting those to offer a reasonable service. Just because even though what those satellites are capable of is significant, the numbers just add up too quickly when you have 10 billion people, sorry, 10 million people in Los Angeles County all trying to get on these towers. So, that's it's an extreme example, but it's the same and it's similar numbers in other major cities too.
But he could try to buy his way into the market. He could try to buy one of the MVNOs like you use, but I think the big guys would cut him off. They're going to go, well, that's fine that you bought them, but we don't. But you can't keep it. After a year, we're killing the contract, right? So
yeah, and I think even if they don't take him seriously, the fact that enough people on Wall Street means that they have to draw a line in the sand, or else investors will start to question if they don't have a future. And this is all about like reading the chicken entrails. This is not about actual performance or things like that. This is all Wall Street, and the money and the financialization that drives these decisions is about expectations. And so I think
he's taking on every single aspect of the industry. That's a lot of people to tackle. He's making a lot of enemies. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll just say that like people are pretty impressed with what he's done, but when you look under the hood, there's a lot of kind of like duct tape and paper clips holding things together that may not survive as long as people think it needs to.
One last thought: he'd probably need 50,000 Earth stations to do that.
Well, there is one that's popped up here in Minnesota. And I mean, I guess it's interesting because the response to that, it's out in Wright County, which is 45 miles northwest of Minneapolis. It's near Monticello, Doug. I know you've done work with them in the past. And it's 40 acres, and they want to put on these, like, I don't know, you can think of it like they're domes, but they're like the size of like a backyard shed. They're not, they're not hideous or anything, but it's having the same reaction among local folks who they're mad about data centers and they don't want these ground stations. And so it'll be curious to see whether or not there's big fights over the future of more ground stations that'll slow it down, which is, I think, is the point you're making.
Well, the downside to ground stations are they create a frequency dead zone. Airports do the same thing. I mean, Wi-Fi, all sorts of stuff don't work. If your house is right next to the airport, you're screwed, right? And so that they do the same thing. So there's so much frequency being used at that ground station that they drowned out a lot of other stuff. So people don't want to be neighbors. 40 acres is probably big enough if it's in the center. So, but there is that risk.
You just build a giant metal fence around it for a Faraday cage, and then I'm sure people would love to look at that. It just looks like a Supermax prison or something.
Right. Yeah.
So people have real concerns about land use, and that's really coming to the forefront on these things. All right, we're going to talk about the future of the Federal Communications Commission, and in the wake of this decision regarding the Federal Trade Commission, where President Trump fired 2 commissioners that he didn't like and did not follow the law that Congress laid out in creating the commission, and basically said, "I'm the president; I get to decide, who's a commissioner." And the courts basically said, "Yes, you can do that, except for the I lost it with the financial one. What's the Doug? The
Federal Reserve Bank,
right? The board of the Federal Reserve, and honestly, like, this is one of those things. I mean, I'll just be totally naked with, like, the court just makes this stuff up, and the court was basically like grasping for a rationale that allowed them to say the president cannot touch the Federal Reserve Board, but can touch other boards, and there's no reason to think that this reasoning will stand any longer than another court looking at it and deciding they want to change their mind on it. So I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock in that, but in the short term, it sure seems like a president is able to fire anyone from commissions, including the Federal Communications Commission.
Yeah, and now different agencies have different rules, and the FCC has a rule that you have to have at least 3 commissioners to have a quorum. So so he has to be careful not to drop below that number. So right now today, he probably doesn't want to fire the one Democrat, but he's already as soon as this ruling came out, then they nominated a new Republican commissioner, and she seems pretty good. She's already working at the commission. She's got pretty good experience. So
Yeah, some of the people who were put on the commission are people that just seem to be people that didn't really have much of a care for what the commission actually does. There are people that wanted to advance pet causes, like Commissioner Chairman Carr now wants to trample free speech. I think Symington also wants to just do whatever it takes to support right wing causes. I think Commissioner Gomez, who's the Democrat on there, she followed more of a traditional path, which is to say she was a lawyer at Verizon and generally thinks there should be more regulation on some issues, which is what the Democrats usually look for, but also having come from industry. And I just, it's, the commission is supposed to have 5 members, and it's basically 3-2 traditionally, with the 3 being whatever party is in power. And the ability of the president to just fire the other commissioners is important. Now, I did think it took me a while to understand some of this stuff. So some of the basics that's helpful to know is that even if we don't have 3 commissioners, so if tomorrow President Trump fired Commissioner Gomez from the Federal Communications Commission, they would have 2 commissioners left. They would not be able to act as the board, as the commission, but the bureaus underneath would be able to make decisions, and so they could approve certain mergers. The devices would still be approved that go through the pipeline. They would still do a lot of the work that they do, but they couldn't really set new policy until they had 3 commissioners. And Doug, you've said before, it's not just a matter of putting a 3rd commissioner on and then you're ready to go. There's kind of a delay as people figure out where the parking is and how to ride the elevators and do all the other stuff related to the job.
But here they've nominated someone who's been at the commission for several years, so she already has that learning curve. So that was a pretty smart choice. That kind of tells you that they're thinking of firing Gomez, is what that says. Doesn't mean they will, but that's certainly a good sign that that's what they have in mind, because she'd be up and running immediately.
I don't think it doesn't make a difference.
It doesn't make any difference. They already pass every single thing they want. So what they don't like, I think, is they just don't like Gomez putting out, every time they do something she doesn't like, she writes a contrary opinion and publishes it. I think they just don't want her to do that.
Yeah, they're very thin-skinned.
They're very thin-skinned. So I think it's really that, because they can win. They have the majority. They can have every single issue, and they do. They win. When they put it on the agenda for the following month, it's going to pass. They've never put anything on the agenda that didn't pass. It's like, well, gee, what? That's a really close vote, I bet. So now it's funny, because in the past, the commissions were very bipartisan. There were issues where they would put stuff on the agenda and they wouldn't pass. And sometimes the party in power, it wouldn't pass. I mean, they used to really debate the topics and have real debates. They don't do that anymore. So
yeah, I have a lot of criticism of some of the glory days, but my impression was they did take the job much more seriously. I mean,
they did.
This is a communications for the nation. This involves emergency communications. It should be setting the guidelines that will allow businesses to invest for decades to try to figure out how to make the most productive investments. It should be determining whether or not everyone has high quality internet access. These are issues that will literally change the rate of growth of our economy if we get it right. The impact on education. We have many millions of children, like I would say between 6 and 8 million kids go home and don't have internet access at home, right? Resolving that would significantly change the future of our growth by giving more kids a real opportunity, giving more adults, frankly, as well, veterans, all kinds of people who are looking for opportunities to engage, to build new skills and things like that. But they don't take it seriously.
No, they don't. And now you have to wonder, if you want to talk about the future of the FCC, there were 2 other court cases that make you wonder if they're still relevant. I mean, it might be time to talk about not even having an FCC. We need their frequency work, and we need them to check all the radios and stuff. Those could be put under Commerce or somebody, or fair. And so, you might remember there was I think it was McLaughlin Chiropractic versus McKesson, and they basically said that no one has to listen to experts anymore at agencies. That experts don't mean anything. That's a really short summary of what it said. But it said, courts can say, no, I don't believe those experts. So courts can override the FCC, even though the FCC is experts, right? And so that was an unbelievable. And then there was this Loper Bright ruling that said that courts don't have to pay any attention to rulings whatsoever. They simply said courts don't have to listen to what agencies say. They can rule against them. So essentially, every court in the country can overturn an FCC thing. Because of that, every single thing that comes out now goes to a lawsuit. Every single order they make that's unpopular, every single one goes to a lawsuit. So,
right. I think
yeah.
some people would say that you're overstating the case, Doug, but I think there's a very strong defense for what you're saying in that there is no limiting principle. The argument about the Bright Loper decision, or Loper Bright, whatever it was about, whether or not the courts should defer when there was a lack of clarity in the statute. And I don't think there's like a sense now that the courts have to listen at all to the agencies. I feel like we've seen a tremendous amount of power over my lifetime moving from Congress, not like stolen from Congress, but Congress is like giving it up, and the courts are grabbing it, and the president's grabbing it, and we're seeing a system that is significantly changing. And that decision is not exactly clear what role agencies have when the courts can just second guess them at every opportunity.
Well, yeah, because it's down nowadays. It's just not even worrying about whether the people go court shopping. Let's go to the court that's going to side my way. I mean, that's what happened in the USF case. 3 different USF cases came to the Supreme Court because they went to 3 different courts, and then they got 2 that said it was okay, 1 that said it wasn't. They were shopping, and they were just looking for one who said the USF is bad, and so that's crazy. So. We didn't used to have that. It used to be you couldn't do that. So that now it's kind of like the courts themselves are a free for all. So
I think it's much less predictable. One of the points that you were making, Blair Levin had also addressed, which is, you're saying maybe there's not a role for the Federal Communications Commission. Right now, I think there's a lot of concern. We see a lot of the conservative folks who are deeply concerned about what Brendan Carr is doing, not only on Jimmy Kimmel and the licenses for broadcast stations where they air speech that he's critical of, but also when it comes to merger review and things like that. And it does seem like the Federal Communications Commission is following some other agencies' lead, and the lead of, if you believe a lot of the reporting that I believe, the president himself. And Blair Levin talks about this as the market for presidential affection, which is to say that if you have a dispute in front of the FCC over a spectrum issue, whoever might have given more money to the right causes or the right accounts that go into the executive branch is more likely to win than the party that the engineers would have picked if they were reviewing it. And this is like, our economy grew historically in part because we got rid of a lot of corruption. We had systems that were not perfect, but they significantly prevented the kind of corruption you see in a lot of places around the world. And it allowed businesses to thrive in ways that they can't when you have to just pay off people. So it's deeply concerning, some of the signs that we're seeing, and the ability of the president, and not just this president, but especially this president. Like, I'm concerned about other presidents, but especially this one when it comes down to being able to put their thumb on the scale or whole hand on the scale.
No, I'm not going to do you a disservice and mention Woodrow Wilson, but I'm going to go back a little further. We had horrendous problems here that Teddy Roosevelt came in and just kicked butt. I mean, we had the big companies, the big rich people just simply ruled this country completely. It was massive corruption at a scale almost equal to what we have today. Today is probably worse, but it was bad. And so we did fix all that, so that's been 100 years. It took 100 years, and now we're back again. We're going to have to fix it again. So
yeah, and it was not inevitable. I mean, I've been digging into that history lately, and Teddy Roosevelt was a particularly thick-skinned, focused person, and other people this was like a 40 or 50-year effort to try to deal with some of that corruption, and it failed, and it failed, and it failed, and he was one of the people that helped to get it through. You never know when that person's going to come along.
Right. We're going to need that person again. So I thought we had that person at the FTC last time. She now works for New York City.
Yes. Lena Khan.
That's interesting. Yeah. So
yeah, she's young. Hopefully she'll be back.
I think she will.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to talk last about, no, that was it.
That was it. That's our list.
That was it. We blew through it. It's 30 minutes, Doug. I'm tired. It's been a long week, a really inspiring week for me, but both of us were able to keep it on point, it sounds like.
Well, we have to apologize to everybody for that.
Don't expect it to happen again.
That never happened again. No.
So, well, thank you so much, Doug. And for people who forget to read it, you can sign up and get the digest. You can get the emails from Doug when he's publishing the pieces. If you go to potsandpansbyccg.com and look in the right-hand column, last I checked. All right, Doug, we will catch you next time.
All right. Good as always, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Unbuffered podcast. We have transcripts for this and other episodes available at ilsr.org/podcast. While you're there, check out our other podcasts from ILSR, including Building Local Power, Local Energy Rules, and the Composting for Community podcast. Email us at podcast@communitynets.org with your ideas for the show. Follow us on Blue Sky. Our handle is @CommunityNets. You can catch the latest research from all of our initiatives by subscribing to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. While you're there, please take a moment to donate. Your support in any amount helps keep us going. Unbuffered is produced by Christopher Mitchell with editing provided by me, Jordan Pittman. Until next time, thanks for listening.